All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Kim Price, and I am technically a co-founder of Outride. I want to welcome you to day 2 of the Outride Research Summit. I just want a little bit about myself and a little bit about about what we can expect for today. This year's summit is really focused on transforming youth cycling through health, community, and access. This is the 6th year of our summit, and just as someone who has been connected and part of Outride from the very beginning, this has just been an incredible and just quite a dramatic improvement and development of this work over the past 6 years. I started actually working for Specialized Bicycles about 12 or 13 years ago, and I have a background in neuroscience, specifically in adolescent brain development, which I at one point decided to give up my academic career. I came into the bike industry, which was also a passion of mine, and that was right around the same time that our founder Mike Sinyard became interested in looking at this connection between the benefits of cycling particularly on kids with ADHD, but just how does cycling impact the brain for positive benefits. So going back to about 2012, 10 years ago, we started doing research and looking, and examining how cycling can benefit kids in schools, particularly in middle school, during that really challenging adolescent development period. And from those early days back in 2012, we ran another number of studies, which really ultimately became and developed into the programming that we see today with Outride. And we've expanded our reach, expanded the number of children and communities that we impact. And what we are talking about over these past 2 days is really kind of the pinnacle and the demonstration of all the great work that we've invested in over the last couple of years or the last 5 years, and really an investment in a view forward into what we will continue to invest in into the future. So again, just to recalibrate for those that weren't able to join us yesterday or are new to Outride and are really trying to understand really what we're about. I mean, from the very beginning, Outride's been committed to changing lives through cycling. That's just a core belief and tenet that we have as a team. And I think anyone who is part of the cycling industry, either directly or indirectly, really understands the power of the bicycle to change lives. And that's very, very core to what we believe. If you go to the next slide. Thank you. More specifically, as I mentioned before, we started as a research organization, really trying to understand the benefits of cycling for kids in schools, and then from there, really built out, what we consider our 3 pillars of Outride. One is our research, which is front and foremost to the work that we do, and it really guides and leads, leads the direction of Outride. But we manifest that through our school-based programs, through being able to help children through the school day, help them with all of the things that kids struggle with, whether it be cognitive issues, attention issues. We've seen so much of this through the period of COVID, of mental health issues with kids, as well as social and emotional issues and challenges that kids may have at this period of their development period. More recently, we've created the Outride Fund, which provides matching grants for community-based organizations to help break down the barriers to provide access for all kids in all communities to really harness and benefit from the benefits of cycling. So through all those mechanisms, we are looking to really change the lives of kids and communities through cycling, and by creating inclusive cycling communities. So there's a lot there, and we are really happy today to be able to speak more specifically about the community and youth voice components of what it is that Outride supports. But before we launch into our speakers for today, I would like to just give a brief summary of what we covered yesterday for those that weren't able to join us. So our research summit yesterday kicked off with a welcome from the leader of our research pillar, Dr. Esther Walker, who is our research program research program director. We also heard from Mike Senior, who was the founder of Specialized Bicycles and the co-founder of Outride, and Alan Reese, who from Stanford, Dr. Alan Reese, who has been leading our research efforts at Stanford for several years. So they kicked us off yesterday, speaking of the intuitive spark that became Outride 10 years ago, and our mission and vision that drives the team every day, and why it's critically important that we continue this work to bring awareness of the power of bicycles to transform the health and well-being of youth, their families and communities, through its power to light up the brain and to build those connections and break down barriers to provide access to all of us to be able to reap the benefits of cycling. Following that, our marketing and communications and ambassador leader, Tasha Tinjero, hosted a diverse panel with 5 of our passionate ambassadors who shared their stories about what cycling means to them and how they use cycling to create connection, build community, increase access, and share the importance of health and wellness with youth. So the stories of these ambassadors, and again, they were from a diverse experience group, all focused on the same goals of creating access for all, really embody our belief that together we can outride anything. Following the panel, we had our first, in our first session, we had presenters from an array of our research partners, including Dr. Alan Reese and Stephanie Van Ripper from Stanford University, Dr. Pat O'Connor, who is a professor of kinesiology at the University of Georgia, and Marjorie Polster and Joshua, what is Joshua's last name? Okay. From the Office of Disease and Prevention and Health Promotion. This renowned group of researchers and advocates discussed the impact of cycling and physical activity on how we think, how we feel, and how we behave, as well as the power of physical activity to transform the health of communities and what we can do to keep more youth moving around the country. The second session, our second session yesterday, really focused on education and was led by our Writing for Focus program manager, Lauren Freeman. Lauren led a discussion with researchers and educators, including Ryan McKinney from Spooner Middle School, Fletcher Demetriov, representing Loma Linda University, and Dr. Tristan Wallhead from the University of Wyoming. This group shared the latest applied research from schools around the country. These innovative speakers shared promising findings about cycling's impact on health, well-being, and performance in academic and extracurricular activities. So we heard from our foundational research, looking at research on the brain and behavior. We looked at the applied research in the schools. And then during our third session, really emphasized the impact that our Outride Fund is having in communities. And it was led by our Outride Fund manager, Chaz Robinson, who shared 2 success stories from our most recent round of funding. And then today, Outride has invested $1.5 million in matching grants to more than 170 projects across the country. And we've impacted more than 12,000 youth, accelerating youth projects across the USA through these matching grants and local fundraising efforts. We also heard from Dr. Charles Chancellor from Clemson University and from Morgan Lavender and Dan Williams from Mile High 360, who spoke on the impact of the Outride Fund grants are having for their recipients. So it was really a full day that really showcased all of the vast array of programming that we have in our 3 primary pillars. For day 2 of the summit, we really want to shift gears a little bit, and we want to start conversations focused on the importance of youth voice. So while youth has been the core, youth really has been at the core of the work that Outride's focused on over the past 10 years. We continue to expand because we believe that bicycles can create access for all folks, all communities, but youth really is at the core of where we like to focus our attention and benefits. So we want to start today with representatives from the National Bike Council, who will be moderating a panel with key cycling industry and community leaders, focusing on the role of the bike industry can play in supporting cycling and increasing access for young people. Following that panel, we'll then hear from other organizations that are working hard to incorporate youth voice directly into their work and why it's so critical to their work. So we were looking forward to this great lineup of speakers. And as we go through this morning, for those of you that are participating and watching remotely, please don't forget to submit your questions via the Whova app under the session, and we'll use those questions to pose to our panels and our guests today to hear from them even more deeply. So with that, I'd like to welcome the moderator from our open panel, Joe Funches from the National Youth Bike Council. So take it away.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for transferring it to me. My name is Joe Funches, and I'm part of the National Youth Bike Council. And the biking community, for me, means a lot, since it's where I have learned many things, and I have really learned more than, it's just more than just bikes. It can be something that people do to have a healthy life. It's something that people can use to get away from things that they are dealing with in life. And it's been, again, really supportive towards what I like to be doing. So this has been a wonderful experience, and I would like to get started on what it really means and the questions behind what I need to get going with. All right, so before I get started with the questions, I want to first thank our panelists, Mercedes Ross, Bob Burns, Stacey Wilhelm, Raven Wells, and Alison Dewey for all making this possible on our part, for being here today to elaborate on what they think. And I just want to give them a huge shout out. And what the National Youth Bike Council is, it's youth-oriented leadership. So we are just, we try and, in the bicycle community, we're a youth-led organization that promotes the youth involvement in the bicycling community. So we want to get that more out and more youth into the bicycling community. And we want to make sure that they're leading or have a say in what they like to do. Youth like myself that might have more of a say in what they like to see, I want to make sure that that gets out there. So that's what we're all about, and that's what we're trying to promote. And we have been doing this for a little while now, and the National Youth Bike Council that's their goal, to get that widespread with more youth in the bicycling community. Here we have a few of our a few guests here. We had, during the summer, we had something called Summer Chats. And during the Summer Chats, we had actually reached out to a few organizations and groups. And we had one of their, either vice presidents or one of their members come on, and we asked them a few questions about the bicycling community and what they would like to see get changed up. It was a huge experience for myself, because I had a part in a few of these, and I was able to ask them what they liked and what their first bike was like, and give a little bit of input on myself. And after I did that, they were able to give their responses on a few questions we had asked, and it was just a really great time. We had learned a lot of information, and we really enjoyed the conversations we had with each other. So via these summer chats, we have learned a lot, and we have been improving ever since then. But today I want to ask a few other questions, and mainly I want to start off with this one. As we have been knocking out a few goals of ourselves and trying to accomplish a few of our things, we want to ask back the community and see what y'all would like to, or see what y'all are working on. So one of the first questions we wanted to ask was, what role can national level organizations play in connecting and supporting local what role can national level organizations play in connecting and supporting local activities to get more young people riding? And this question's up for any of those panelists that would like to answer.
I'll answer. My name is Mercedes Ross. I'm with Project Bike Tech, and we feel that national organizations need to remove barriers so that cycling is totally inclusive. This includes connecting all communities with bike lanes, remote bike workstations, and bike education for all. So that's kind of our, we feel that it is a national push that youth understand that cycling is available to everybody.
Want me to go? I'm Bob Burns from Trek. I'm the advocacy guy at Trek. And, you know, speaking in terms of a specific example, one of the organizations that we work a lot with is NICA. Many of you may be familiar with NICA. It's a national level youth mountain biking organization. And NICA, as a national organization, works with local leagues, which are state level organizations. And then within the leagues, there are teams, and those teams are local, hyper local. They tend to be based around schools, or they are based around community centers. And one of the things that we have found is the most important character in those organizations in terms of getting more kids riding, besides the kids themselves, of course, is the local coach. And the role that the national organization plays is to provide the leagues and the coaches with the training that they need to understand how to teach kids how to ride bikes, how to teach kids how to solve some of the barriers to riding a bike, and then providing the structure for those kids to participate in local and state level events. So that's one specific example of a role that a national organization can play.
Alrighty, thank you so much for your feedback so far. So we actually have a few other questions here. The next question I would have is, what do you think the incentive is for young professionals to do advocacy work, especially in the cycling community? And on top of that, how do you think we should best incentivize them to engage in this work?
I can start that off. Well, I feel like there's a huge incentive on the part of youth themselves already, because bicycling is a large part of shaping our future, and a big part of that future is, you know, better bike lanes, more people riding, education in school. And I think that youth have a huge stake in that, because they're the ones that will be riding these bike lanes longer, taking over senior positions in change making. So I think they already have that incentive within themselves. And I think the thing to do from the national organization standpoint is to encourage that. And I've had the chance to talk to a lot of youth organizations through a blog that we've done through the league. And one of the three things that I've heard the most is that just giving a starting point is an incentive, like summits like this or national bike summits offering free attendance for youth. I can't remember exactly who it was from the National Youth Bike Council, but they actually said the bike advocacy world is so big, which is great. It's what we want, but it's also hard to know where to start. So I think providing those points and hand-on experience, like offering internships at your group, or, you know, offering just career building opportunities, would be a great incentive to get them started.
Yeah, I agree with Raven there. Bicycle advocacy has to come from the heart. It comes from within. It comes from wanting to make your community a better place for riding a bike and getting people on bikes. And there aren't a lot of incentives for advocacy work other than, you know, your belief in making the world a better place. An example of an internship that Raven mentioned, internships, you know, in many communities now there are bike share systems, and those bike share systems do provide internships to local people in the community. And when we put a bike share system in a community like Philadelphia, for example, we spend a lot of time with the city figuring out where to put the stations and to make sure that they are in locations that are serving the entire community, not just the downtown affluent portion of the community. But what we've learned is that if you get somebody access to a high quality bicycle like a bike share bike, you can change their life. Now somebody can, instead of having to spend 2 hours on a bus getting across town, they can hop on a bike and be across town in 20 minutes. But getting the community itself, particularly often the underserved portion of the community, to adopt that technology takes activation. And young people, generally speaking, tend to be much earlier adopters than old guys like me. So that's definitely a role that kids can play, young people can play in a community, and that is get involved with the local bike share system as a volunteer or as a low paid intern or as an entry-level employee, and figure out how you can help explain and activate that incredible amenity for the entire community.
I'd like to, that's a great angle that Bob is talking about. And Project Bike Tech also does earn a bike program. So if a city has an earn a bike program, our students do those programs in the summer to help the community. And so likewise, like the bike share, earn a bike programs in all the communities are a great way for young people to get involved and help other people to fix up and have bikes that work in their community. So that's the second way that people can get involved and be part of that drive to get more people on bikes, because if they don't function, they can't ride them, right? So fixing bikes is just as important too.
I'm thankful for all your inputs into both those questions. There are a lot of incentives for me as well, as I have been visiting events, different ones, and it's been pretty exciting to know that there are a lot of people backing up those ideas to get all those things accessible to youth. And I've seen it for myself firsthand. So moving from that question, apart from funding, what are the other ways you can support grassroots efforts of young people investing in the cycling community?
Hi, this is Alison. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm with the League of American Bicyclists. Raven and I are colleagues at the league. So I think Raven was talking about highlighting some of the things that are going on and that are youth driven throughout the country. The League of American Bicyclists is a national group, so we have that larger kind of scope, pulling in stories and information from all over the country. And what we try and do is really highlight some of the great things that are going on and inspire other groups, youth, adults, to empower youth through those stories, through those highlights. And I wanted to go back to that first question about a national organization, what we can be doing to be helping youth and empowering youth. And one of the things that the league really sees as our kind of role in that growing the bicycling movement from the advocacy perspective is providing tools. It takes a long time to create a youth cycling class or draw up a press release about something that you're doing in your community. So the more we can do that as a national group and provide those tools at the local level to youth or to adults to showcase what the youth in their community are doing, just the easier it becomes for that to be happening and for that to be getting out there.
Thanks, Alison. Hi, this is Stacey Wilhelm from Specialized Bicycles, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. And, you know, one of the most common themes that we see certainly in the field and that I've heard is this consistency factor, right? It takes a long time for programs to catch on, and it takes a long time for them to build steam and for the youth to feel like they can become engaged and to trust a program. So I think one of the major factors is really just budgeting that time and commitment to cycling, to youth in your community. And then, you know, some of the grassroots efforts they go beyond cycling. They're outdoor, they're health minded. And, you know, when you look at the big picture of Outride, the goal and, you know, the drive with youth and the research is really to expand this, this health place and this research place to understand the youth better. And, you know, one example that we've done at Specialized, and, you know, I'm fortunate enough to be a part of a team that gets to work directly with the communities, with the riders. We work a lot with Outride and building bikes, working with schools, and, you know, can't say enough great things about NICA and Project Bike Tech and the league and everybody that we always run into in the field. It's fantastic. But another thing that we brought in, which seems to be a little bit more inclusive, is all the trail work. We do a lot of work on trails, and it's something that you don't have to be an expert cyclist. You don't need to have the right equipment. You can show up to a trail and help your community. You can clean up, you can help dig, whatever your little heart desires. So I think, you know, Specialized is dedicated to, you know, really giving back to the community on a handful of levels. One of our favorite things is the soil searching initiative. And so, you know, trying to get involved or engaged in those types of things can really bring a community together in a way that maybe we didn't plan on. So, you know, really appreciate all the efforts, but I would say the biggest thing is that consistency and dedicating the time.
So, Stacey, one part of that question for you. So you're saying like volunteer work would be helpful. So apart from like things like funding, a volunteer work would be that one beneficial factor to get people out there and doing those things besides them, you helping out the community indirectly.
Yes, absolutely. Being able to carve out time, whether it's within a company or, you know, setting the youth up to understand and appreciate that it can go beyond just funding, that their time can be really impactful. And then that spreads that. And that's a very big grassroots effort to just start to show, and leading by that example, dedicating your time.
Yeah, and that leads to, I think, Stacey, I love your comments, but and you know, those youth talking to their friends, to their social circles at school or, you know, on a campus, and really bringing their groups in, their social circles and other people that they are relating to. You know, that's how, for me, how I see a movement growing and becoming, you know, this groundswell is the local efforts, the grassroots, the people on the ground, the people that are, you know, wanting to see that bike lane in on their way to school, a safer bike infrastructure to get to school or to get around town, because, you know, they don't want to have a car, or they don't have the means to have a car. So I think really, like, bringing them in for volunteer opportunities, internships. We should always be paying our interns for their time and their energy. And you know, that translates to them bringing others into the community.
I definitely do agree with that. Spreading that awareness and that joy is something that people definitely want to get behind. And it's something that I've been also interested in getting behind, you know, figuring out what makes people so excited to jump on their bike. And I realized that it's much more than just jumping on a bike. So it's very exciting to get behind a lot of things. I like to volunteer a lot for the type of work I do. And it's been very nice running into certain people and meeting certain people that I never would have met probably if I haven't decided to just volunteer to help out my community. So I have another question then. Have you seen the bicycle advocacy directly impact the lives of young people?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Raven.
Yeah, I would definitely say that when talking to a lot of youth cycling organizations, like I said, I've done a blog series for the league where I've reached out to youth organizations and asked them what they would like to see national organizations do to help get more people riding, similar to, you know, what this panel is about, which is really cool. And a lot of I've heard is that it's really a lot more than just about bettering bicycling. Like, it's actually a tool for learning about the world around them and advocacy efforts that can really branch out into anything. Like, somebody might start in bicycle advocacy and extend into another area of advocacy through that way. And one of the favorite things that I've heard is from the Atlanta Students Advocating for Pedestrians. They talked about how a lot of the people that work with them were not even involved with biking or transportation advocacy before they joined the group. They were just actually interested in government and how advocacy worked. So they listed that as like a way to get more youth advocates involved in bicycle advocacy, like present it as a way to learn more about just how government works or how advocacy works or how building your community works. And then something that I love that they said was, when kids can see the impact of their work in advocacy, it keeps them engaged, connected to the community and to the work, and it gives them a sense of control and empowerment. I feel like that was really powerful, because I definitely feel like even to this day, when I'm doing my work and my job, I feel empowered that I'm, you know, helping to build something in the world. So I think that's a really impactful statement. And also just making sure that you're giving them the opportunity to lead. I actually also get to see a lot of youth initiatives through highlighting a lot of our Bicycle Friendly America awardees. They're awards that we give out to bicycle friendly businesses, communities, and universities. And there's a school called Dayton School, and they actually have their students, high school students, help submit their bicycle friendly business application. So they have to like talk to stakeholders at the school, people around the community, to help fill out an application to talk about bicycling efforts at their school. So I thought that was really cool that the teacher decided to just hand over the reins to them. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. The application's a pretty big thing. And they actually won the award, of course, so that was really cool. And when talking to the teacher about it, they said that the students were really excited about the fact that their teacher had so much trust in them to do this big thing. So I think definitely just trusting that you know what they're doing and that they have the ability to take on this work is important.
I think those are really good points. And I would just, you know, when you add it all up, there's currently more money available at the federal level to put cycling infrastructure in this country than there ever has been before. And that's the result of many years of work by national lobbying organizations like the League and like People for Bikes. And but to get that federal money, there's always a requirement that there's a local or a state match. And that's the hard part. So you get 80% of the way there with the federal money, and then you need money from local politicians and local budgets one way or another to get that project on the ground. And projects take a long, long time to plan and a long time to get done. A bike lane doesn't magically appear. A bike park doesn't magically appear. They take, 3 to 10 years to plan out and actually happen. And one of the most powerful, there's always this point where you're in front of some budget committee or some city council in any one of these projects. And one of the most powerful things I've ever seen is when local kids, whether they're local NICA racers who want a place to practice, they don't need another Little League field, they need a mountain bike park, or whether it's a local youth group that wants to put safe cycling infrastructure in their community, coming to those meetings, working with a local advocacy organization that's trying to get that project on the ground, and actually showing up and making some notes and standing up at that podium and telling, speaking truth to power and telling those city council members that we want that bike path because it will help improve the health and safety in my neighborhood is extremely powerful when it comes from young people in the community. And that is definitely something that young folks can do to help the advocacy cause. Show up. The world is run by those who show up.
Those are a lot of great points. And one point that's coming across strong is the fact that it's a lot of groundwork, a lot of thinking behind it, and a lot of planning to get it all done. So with all that going on in the background, for youth that are just getting into the scene and trying to get things started for themselves, I'm going to give you something to think about. What do you believe are barriers to increasing youth participation and advocacy, decision-making, and leadership roles? And what kind of support systems can current professionals in the industry provide in order to break down some of these barriers? I believe these questions are very important since these are kind of things to get you thinking about what you could do to improve the likes of youth being more engaging in their communities and some things they would like to see for themselves to be able to get into it or transition into it rather easily. So these are some of these questions that are just there to help you figure out an idea or help you in those plans that you are putting together to make it more youth friendly and towards having them like at your first thought.
So I think one of the barriers that I see at, I don't know, maybe community meetings. Well, one, we don't have many youth coming to community meetings. I wish there were more, and I think there are, could be ways to get them there. But I think it's the attitude and kind of perspective of the adults in the room, the people that see themselves as holding the power of community decisions. I think adults can be more receptive to youth voices and giving them a seat at the table. I'm just thinking of in my community, we have a school board, right? And as part of that board, there is a student that sits on that board. There's a seat specifically for the student, and it's the youth in the schools that vote for this seat, and they get to elect their representative to the school board. And it's a really great idea because when my kids see this kid, the kid that represents them at activities, they're like, oh, there he is, like he's like this rock star. But I think, that gives validity to the youth voice, is that they have a seat at the table. And I'm just thinking of, at the League of American Bicyclists, maybe we should have a seat for the youth, a youth voice to contribute to steering our organization. I don't know if anyone else is has a board that helps direct them, or if you have a seat for youth on your board, but I think that could be one really great idea. I think I'm gonna bring it back to my organization.
That's an awesome idea. I think the other pieces are our communication structure is all structured to adults, and timing. Everything's, every community day. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. We have bike lanes everywhere. Huge cycling community. Every community night we have is a community night. It's at 7 p.m. And getting kids involved late in the evening or, after school, these are things that we could probably start incorporating into their school day, working with schools, I think is a huge piece. And it's great to see, in our community, we have a lot of bicycle advocacy and related activities. And it really just, that in itself breaks down barriers. Cycling can be very intimidating. People don't know where to ride. They don't know how to ride. They don't know how to have access to things. I think the more we get involved in a youth's everyday planning, then cycling becomes more consistent and easy to get a hold of. So I think, Alison, to your point, we really should consider, are there enough youth and the right youth involved? And, how can we continue to incorporate, and, having the adults kind of let go a little, which I think is the hardest part. They don't know how, but no, I think that does help to see, and having examples and highlighting youth, especially today, seeing a youth run panel, it's awesome. So there's a handful of things we could all do.
So
Yeah,
great, Alison. Such a great idea to have youth. As you know, our program is in high school, junior and senior year, and we have an entire part of our curriculum is based on what advocacy they can get involved in. One of the projects as part of their grade is to be involved in advocacy in their community, and they have to be part of that. Part of that is part of their grade. So we introduce them to that in Project Bike Tech, and we really encourage community leaders to go to local high schools and introduce what advocacy groups they're leading. Also, you've got such a great audience at high schools and young people who want to do things. We have what's called hero meetings, and these advocacy leaders come into our classrooms and tell students about what they're doing. And so that introduction is key, and also having them involved. Allison's such a great idea to have them involved on a board. So I'm gonna do that as well.
It is a good idea. The other thought that occurs to me is that the advocacy landscape is confusing, right? There's a lot going on. There's a ton of different organizations and national, state, and local organizations that have been at it for a long time. And for those of us who make a career out of it, it takes a few years before you really understand the lay of the land and who does what and why and how the process flows. It's not something that's easy to understand, and probably there's a better way to provide education, or there must be advocacy 101 just to explain who does what and why.
Yeah, I really love that idea of Alison too. I'm like, we definitely should pitch that. But I also think that one of the things I've heard a lot from youth cycling organizations themselves when talking to them was just an emphasis on fun. Like, I feel like I've heard that word like 5 times from 5 different organizations. They're like, make it fun. And I know that seems really simple, and maybe because it's so simple, it might seem hard to do, but I think the important part of that is asking them what they want. Like the whole purpose of the session, like nothing for youth without youth. I think asking them what they would like to do, what they would like to learn, is how you make sure that it's fun and engaging for them, because they know that best. I always think about, I have a niece who's younger, and I think about if I spend the day with her, I'm like, yeah, I could probably plan out a whole day of activities for us. But when she gets here, she's probably going to tell me what she wants to do. And probably it would be more fun for her if she, told me what she wanted to do, and then we just did that. So I kind of think of it in that way, especially like last year with the National Bike Summit that we host every year. I had the opportunity to work with the National Youth Bike Council on a session, and I was really nervous because it was my first time like moderating and hosting a session, but I was put to ease as soon as I talked to them, because I'm like, great thing about youth is that you get them all in a room and you put an idea out there, or they put an idea out there, and they're just going to run with it. So I feel like that's a really important piece of it, just letting them lead in the content planning process, or like engaging them if you're making a curriculum, like asking them, like, what do you want to learn about, or how would you best learn this method, or something like that. Like, I think engaging them in the planning process is key too.
And that's something I liked hearing across the board, that youth can come with their own perspective and their own ideas, and they always have something to say about what you have to say. And it's always that the difference in the conversations y'all can have that makes it more interesting when a youth is in the room, or when they have a seat to talk, especially when there might not be a space for them to do it. So with a space like that being open for them to talk about what they like to do, or what they found to be the best for them can also benefit or give a different perspective on what you thought would be best for them. And that's pretty good to talk about, since most of these barriers are there for youth currently, and some of these barriers need to be broken down for the youth to feel like that access to be able to speak. With those barriers still being up, youth are still going to be in a way shunned by how they might not have any area to speak, or might not be able to do some things they would like to do. And that's what I think is really great about these questions, or being able to figure out how to bring these barriers down for those youth so they can be able to speak about what they like about the community and be able to help more than what they like to do in this community. So from my perspective, these barriers already been coming down for me as I'm already here. I've been able to do so much in the National Youth Bike Council. I really do appreciate that sense. Maybe when I first got started, there might have been a little unclearance on what to do or where to ride or things like that. But now a greater understanding on how to get around, because it's just been such a good experience, and most barriers have been being put down for me since I've been able to work with the National Youth Bike Council to get an understanding on what is going on in the bicycling community and what it really means to me. So with that, I appreciate everyone input, and you probably could think about more of these questions as we go along, but I'm going to pass it off to you, Joshua.
Thanks so much, Drew. I was actually taking a lot of notes throughout this whole thing. This was really educational for myself. I, kind of hope that we were all taking some notes too. I heard a lot of great things that I actually was surprised to hear. And I really resonated with a lot of the stuff being said. So I just want to thank every one of the panelists, Mercedes, Bob, Raven, Alison, and Stacey for joining us, and Job for really providing us representing, youth on this national scale. And so we have, this little slide here where we just wanted to think about, is it anything particular that you want to take away? And not to take away from my introduction, but I am Joshua, the current president of the National Youth Bike Council. And, I'm sure myself and some of the panelists would love to hear what you have to say in the chat. So, about, what surprised you the most. I just talked about how I was surprised, but I resonate more with the second question in reference to, were there any comments that resonated with you? And I have to hand it to you, Raven. You were saying a lot of stuff that I feel like I'm probably about to say. It was everything, like the conversations I know the league was having with a few youth groups, and something you said in reference to when it comes to ways in which bicycling impacts our lives. It's more than just bettering bicycling. It's about learning about the world around them. I feel like that's kind of what Job was also saying. He started with the bicycle and then kind of ended up in this panel with all these other great speakers. And I feel like it's just a continuous journey. And I know I've had this conversation with one person as well, and we were kind of just joking around. We said, I was like, how did I end up here? All I wanted to do was bike. So it was really relatable. I was like, I just wanted to bike, but I really resonated with what you said too as well, Bob. Those of them that show up make the world go round, something like that. So that was really great. So any other comments, we'd love to see them in the chat. And then one last question. Any takeaways from, this particular conversation? I already heard some small actions, from I think Mercedes and was that Alison, talking about maybe going back and seeing, is there a different way in which they can incorporate young people into the work that they're doing with a little board, providing a direct way to get involved, or whatever that would look like. Would be really interested in seeing what that looks like, or partaking in that in some way. But I really resonated with a lot being said here. I know I'm kind of the only one speaking, but the chat's open 24/7 or until this meeting ends. So feel free to say anything in the chat. All right, can we move to the next slide? And while you're thinking through some of your responses, I did want to bring to light some summit-aligned phrases that came out of the inspiration of our conversations over the summer chats that we had. And you can kind of see here on the right, speaking the loudest, more youth. It's quite literally as plain as that: more friends, more of us. And sometimes you would even hear things like, it's lonely because, generically speaking, it's very normal to want to fit in, especially if you enjoy the activity. like bicycling, and you don't want to be the only one doing it. So I have 3 items listed here around some of the concerns that were repeated themes that we saw when talking to some of the young folks, particularly young folks that wanted to be in leadership, positions or make leadership decisions on behalf of us and some of the other young folks. And so we too, want to be involved in a greater capacity, but we realize a lot of that is evolved around the support level that we receive. So when we start initiatives, we are definitely looking for like additional support, and we kind of envision like this national reach or the national helping bridge gaps in the support systems that exist for young people to be meaningfully involved in the planning process that elevates youth-led work as well, or even work done by youth, serving organizations. And of course, we hope that each attempt for this support system will only get better and better year over year, or attempt over attempt. And I did want to quote one thing from one of the young ladies. Her name was Emily, that had joined us to talk. And she said, one thing is that young people, they get almost pushed to the side when it comes to like these big picture items that seem really scary or even complicated, like transportation or policy. And she was saying that recognition alone from nationwide organizations to help incentivize or even encourage young people to be involved and not only just push to the side would definitely be things that would help. It would even be a great place to start. And a little bit about what Stacey said in reference to communication, I believe it was Stacey, where this communication is structured more towards adults, period. Yes, that's really the way it is. A lot of things that are kind of communicated aren't always received by young people, maybe because of the level at which it's spoken at. And so helping us discover structured ways in which we can continue to turn our desires into actions. And, like Raven said, keeping it fun, because it's definitely that way. A lot of us, don't really leave fun, even when we're older. And I've noticed that when I've done similar, quote unquote, fun types of activities or icebreakers among young people, it really resonates with everybody, because everybody likes to have fun. Last year, I think at this event, the National Bike Council decided to do like a little bit of a Finding Waldo theme, where we hid our logo inside a bunch of other logos and said, hey, the first person that can find it, you kind of win for sticking around to the end of the event. And within less than a few minutes, or probably before the event even ended, someone had already found it. Small things like that to really incentivize or just keep things refreshing. So we realized it's really just this great system that helps us. So more structured ways in which young people continue to get involved. Kind of moving on to the second point, because we know like more together is it sounds obvious, but a great system really isn't built alone. So we imagine that more will be done together. Another desire that was inspired by the summer chats, and more visible cooperation between national level groups to national level groups and local groups to local groups. Because of course, these local groups interact with each other, will hopefully achieve higher levels of cooperation and create multi-beneficial opportunities for young people to be involved. Once for example, would be able to like provide collaborative resources. If we see like 2 local organizations combining resources and power to help local, homegrown youth-led initiatives, it really sets a precedent for how young people can take that help and then also continue to give back, because they won't, be young forever. So it's only a really good loop of feedback. And then kind of moving on to this last point about more opportunity, a little bit like a song and a dance, one step after the other. We start to see more opportunity is something that's what we would like to see, specifically hoping to see more clear, direct pathways to involvement. This is something that Raven probably mentioned earlier, where even I have to remember their name, but they were like a professional youth cyclist, and she was talking to us on our summer chats, and even she was saying like all the young people think that they have to have like the best gear, the best bike and the best workout in order to get kind of where she has gotten. But she said really it just started almost, I believe Mercedes or Stacey mentioned this in reference to just getting out there, volunteering, or just getting on your bike, just putting in the miles, just enjoying it to enjoy riding the bike. And then everything else kind of, you can start looking for everything else after that. So there's so many different ways to get involved. It's like, how do we make it very clear and structure in a way? And then why not just all basically doing it together? So we would like to see like more of that, and especially through local standards, because a lot of these organizations, like local to local, would be very great. And sometimes what works in one city might not work in the other. So a lot of local standardization to make clear, can clearly solidify engagement opportunities for young people, especially those, and maybe even hopping up to leadership positions and levels. And, this all kind of starts with different things. Like I remember I was involved in the Youth Bike Summit at one point, and that was one of the ways I got involved. But before that, I started with the Earn a Bike group, and that's how I got my first bike. And we can move on to the next slide. And so kind of just to top it off, sorry, no, Finding Waldo or any vision like that this time around this year. We really thought long and hard about how can we use our voices in this particular presentation to call to action this particular community. And what is it that we think can make a difference? And first off, I wanted to start with recognition, for this work and for the people that are already in this room. Some of us have been in the space for quite a while, or are venturing into something particularly new, but still in the space. And all of y'all really do contribute to making opportunities like this for even myself possible, just for the speakers, viewers. And I know that what stays in this room probably won't stay in this room, and that's the hope. And so we're hoping that even this conversation among national groups or even local groups can be continued to be shown to other groups, to let them know, like, you young folks can also do this. And we know that that's one step that can be taken today by everybody here, kind of showcasing and really telling the world, you know how the environmental space is. The bicycle space also has some really great stuff going on by young people. We want to show that off. That's one thing, but also we resonated a lot with More Together, where we were hoping to kind of increase more being done by local initiatives, more youth, more bikes, getting more people on bikes. And so this QR code that I have here on the screen is something that we're hoping to create. A local bike shop had started a little group for Earn a Bike groups, and they mentioned how they wanted to learn how other Earn a Bike groups were, growing their programs. And they kind of just had the idea, and it didn't take off like they wanted it. But we wanted to resurface this and bring it back with calling it the YB Hub, particularly, meaning Youth Bike Serving Hub, where all youth bike serving clubs, organizations, teams, groups can really get together and help advance the youth bike serving world together by sharing resources and talking actively among each other. And this is not something that we had seen, and we would love to combine it with whatever else that already exists out there to help all these local groups not be alone. Like you might have like one group here in this part of Tennessee or something like that, but we wanted to really bring all these groups together through this mean, outside of great energy and synergy and conversations like this. So just want to say thank you for all of y'all just, listening to the panel today and this particular presentation. And don't forget to, follow us on social media. So we have 2 QR codes here. Hopefully you know how to use them, because we don't have links. And we are here to learn, National Bike Council and a lot of the folks that we're talking with, and we will continue to advocate on behalf of our peers for support systems that significantly increase youth participation through the bicycle. So thanks so much for coming to our presentation.
Thank you. That was
All
great.
right, well, yeah, that's awesome.
Sorry, I just had to comment on this because it's something we should all remember. Joshua said it, the fun component. I think most of us spend a ton of time being really serious, so people take us seriously. Bicycles are the most fun thing anyone can do, and anybody that gets on a bicycle will inevitably smile or laugh or be in a good mood. And it's our job to bring that fun. That's the only way kids are going to be engaged or involved. And going back to the communication platforms, not only the tone, but where we communicate. and that fun has to come through. So maybe some of us can stay serious, but for the most part, we adults, yeah, if you just remember that something is supposed to be fun, you're like, oh, and then all of a sudden your whole strategy changes. You're like, wait, never mind. So I think that we could all probably do a better job of not taking ourselves so seriously while still getting very serious work done.
So agreed. I think that's the most important part of it. And that's what the kids in our classes call it, Project Life, because the bicycle brings them life. So that's their nickname for it. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you, Job and Joshua, and all the panelists for such an incredible, engaging panel. And so I hope everybody that participated and viewed this today can take away at least one insight from the discussion. I know for me, kind of in the place where we stand, you know, I'm really amazed at how, looking at how organizations come together, all in support of youth. I think the comment that Joshua made at the end of more together, I think is really powerful. And then there were just two other things for me. One is, you know, we like to, you know, talk about putting the rider at the center of everything we do. But the idea here, like if we really listen to young people and put them at the center of what we do and really know that we're here to support them and empower them, that will really help to kind of open up and opportunities for them to participate. And then finally, I love the idea of the bike as a tool and how we can, I mean, while it's a manner of empowerment, but it's also a tool to empower youth in a variety of ways. And so I just really love the conversation today, and thank you all for your time and incredible discussion.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you all. All right. So next on the list, we again continuing with this idea of youth voices. I'd like to welcome James and Simón from BYCS, which is a global NGO guided by the belief that bicycles transform cities and cities transform the world. Transform the world. Ooh, what's going on with my tongue this morning? So, anyways, James and Simón, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks a lot for the introduction, and thanks to Outride for the invitation to speak here. And it was really nice to hear from the panelists and the speakers. It was a great introduction, I think, for us.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So today we'll be presenting one of our organization's active projects, the Youth Bicycle Mayor Movement, which was launched earlier this year, and it's really exciting for us. This is the first time we're presenting about it externally. So we're really thrilled to be here. Before delving into the Youth Bicycle Mayor Movement, I'll take just a second to give a brief introduction about bikes and talk a little bit about how this project fits into what we see our organization's role within the promotion of cycling. Next slide, please. So as Kim said, we're an Amsterdam-based global NGO that supports community-led urban change through cycling. And we envision an urban future in which half of city trips are by bicycle by the end of the decade. And we call this vision 50 by 30. And our mission is to nurture, strengthen, and scale community-driven cycling initiatives globally through a focus on what we call human infrastructure. And we do this through the coordination of our global networks, through among them, the Youth Bicycle Mayor Movement and Network, through engagement programs and research. Next slide, please. So breaking down soft and cultural barriers to cycling is at the heart of BYCS' work, and this program sits right at the intersection of soft barriers to cycling and youth engagement. I'll hand it over to James to talk about how exactly this program addresses soft barriers to cycling among youth.
Great, thank you. We can go on to the next slide. So here, I'm sure a lot of you on the call are familiar, but this is the barrier flow we see with teenagers and cycling. So as soon as teenagers aren't involved in discussions around cycling cities, that leads to interventions and anything that is done for cycling not to include their perspectives. Therefore, it's not as comfortable for them socially or acceptable as teenagers, which means they then miss out on all the benefits that we see with cycling and embracing cycling cultures, as well as passing that on to future generations, and therefore continuing that cycle where cities don't provide for cycling and improve in ways that we know they could. So this is the cycle that we really want to break. and get more livable cities. We jump on to the next slide. In one line, taking those barriers and seeing the opportunity, we know that teenagers are more socially and environmentally conscious than ever, and are mobilizing around the world in protests, in climate movements. And we want to leverage that energy to co-create more resilient, inclusive, and healthy cities. Next slide. So the solution is, well, one solution in this project is the Youth Bicycle Mayor movement, which will build the base of the Youth Bicycle Mayor network. And it's a social movement around cycling with and for youth. We currently facilitate the Bicycle Mayor network, which is the senior version of what this will become. And they're kind of the faces of cycling advocacy in their cities. And we want to bring in a youth perspective here. It's something that's been part of bikes since our inception. And the leadership we want to have from bicycle mayors can trickle down from bicycle mayors who are already in the cities, promoting youth involvement on a wider scale. Next slide, please. This is kind of the theory of change, how this program works, going from activities where we're encouraging teenagers into leadership roles, connecting them with government, and that's in partnership with senior bicycle mayors. That impacts them and their immediate peers because they become have access to this sort of leadership position, as well as becoming cycling advocates. We had a point earlier in the panel of someone who's interested in advocacy but maybe doesn't have a way in. Cycling can totally be that and benefit them. And then on a greater societal level, when we bring a youth perspective into municipalities and then foster that within communities, it has a bigger knock-on beyond their own bubble. Next slide, please. We've got already some youth bicycle mayors. So in Amsterdam, an example of what Lucas Boer is doing is he's part of a coalition called Green Deal Fiets. So where he started and took the role of youth bicycle mayor in a school program, he now is part of a municipality program where they're deciding the future of city cycling in Amsterdam. And another example is Aparna in Trivandrum, who has a bicycle brigade in her school and encourages sort of cycling culture from a grassroots level there. We can go on the next slide. So the campaign we're running now, jump on one more slide, please. We have got funding from the Urban Movement Innovation Fund, and that is enabling us to consolidate and scale this program with a target of 15 youth bicycle mayors and then a first awareness campaign. So if we jump on the next slide, we're working with existing bicycle mayors, as I said, to find their youth counterpart in cities. So we're doing a lot of work currently with bicycle mayors, calls and focusing on how to help them build their campaigns. We provided a toolkit and a structure that they can then adapt for their locality. And that goes over the period of a few months until they're able to select the youth bicycle mayor in their city and announce that and involve local stakeholders. And throughout the whole period of that, we'll be reporting and learning for what this initial funded project being very much a pilot for what we would want to grow throughout the whole world in line with the currently 150 bicycle mayors we have. We see this being equally, if not more strong than that is. If we go on the next slide, please. This is just a few examples of kind of the graphics and the toolkit we make. We're always experimenting with different ways to give resources to bicycle mayors, and this is just one where we have this on Canva and they can adapt for their city. They can change the images, change some of the messaging so it works for them, but they're the ones that know how to run a program and get youth involved. We can advise and guide and give resources, but it's really local change that we foster on an international level rather than telling people what to do. We can go on the next slide and I'll pass over to Simón.
Yeah, thanks. So as James mentioned, currently we have 15 active campaigns worldwide, with some cities having already elected youth bicycle mayors and others running campaigns at the moment to find them. Next slide, please. On this map, you can see where the active campaigns are. We've been able to deploy this project at the scale and speed that we have, as James mentioned, because of the Bicycle Mayor Network. So that's why the geographical distribution of where these campaigns are being run also reflects where our bicycle mayors are most present. And that's why there's a strong focus on India, on Latin America, and in Europe. And this makes kind of the ecosystem of global networks a key asset to the success of this project. So we'll continue to invest both in the Youth Bicycle Mayor Network and in the Bicycle Mayor Network, because as James mentioned, it's a key link between the two. Next slide, please. So some highlights to share from some campaigns. I'll just be, for time's sake, I'll focus on Bogota, where the local bicycle mayor, Laura Carolina, has established a partnership with Al Colegio en Bici, which is a flagship program, kind of like a bike bus to school, and a partnership with the Secretary of Education and Mobility. And what this partnership has allowed is outreach to rural schools in Bogota, rather than focusing just on the urban center. She's been able to use this program to reach areas that are otherwise often left out. Next slide, please. So a key part of this project at the moment, because we're scaling, because we're trying new things, is collecting learnings, both internal of how to best do outreach and communicate with bicycle mayors, but also we're learning a lot about what works best in each city. Next slide, please. And I think we can go to the next one, and I'll hand it over to James.
Yeah, and then we'll jump on to our last slide. The intentions for the future with this project, as we said, this is a pilot and we're looking to scale it further. There's so much we could do with this, but kind of developing that learning framework so we can reproduce it more. Safeguarding is a very important part of this. We're using this to understand better how, as an international organization, we can ensure that consistency globally. And then the resources we can give through funding for leadership training, campaigning workshops, as well as eventually project micro granting, which is something we started working with senior bicycle mayors and would completely pass down to youth bicycle mayors as well. And yeah, more resources and global facilitation. It's the kind of project that the more we're able to give, the more impact we're able to get. And that's us. I think we can jump on the final slide and we can move on to the Q&A. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you both. And I'd like to remind participants to put your questions in either the Zoom Q&A or on Whova. We've had a few come in. I think the biggest one, especially for those here in the US, is are there any plans for involving bicycle mayors in the US? And how can we, and for those on the call, how could we help you to expand cities throughout the US?
Yeah, great question. So currently in North America, we have one active campaign in Toronto, so not in the US, but we are currently, the funding that we have allows us to take this to 15 cities, but we definitely have a very strong group of bicycle mayors in the United States that are interested in taking this to their cities as well. And in 2023, we'll be looking to expand that. And we've also been in conversations with Joshua about how we could also partner and complement both platforms to elevate youth voices.
Oh, terrific. Next question. So what are you hearing from the impact on the youth that participate? So as they're participating in these initiatives, what kind of impact is it having on them personally or professionally, but in terms of the long-term impact on their professional direction?
Just to clarify, you mean professionally as in how it then can build into the rest of their life, like a career?
Yeah, in terms of like building skill building and so on. Like, how are you hearing from the youth that are participating, and how is it setting them up in terms of like their trajectories into the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So a big part of this is really giving leadership skills and passing that both from us and from local bicycle mayors. It's something, so we have quite a strong network in India, and there a lot of bicycle mayors are finding youth bicycle mayors through the schooling systems. And there's been quite a big barrier more from parents than from the youth themselves of not sure we want to get involved in this. It might take away from school. It might detract from exams. And so we're having to communicate the value of this in terms of employability perspective. There we're working with bicycle mayors on a case-by-case basis and understanding, can we create some kind of qualification or certificate for this, and how can we communicate the value of this to an employer? What are the soft skills that a young person would gain from being part of the Youth Bicycle Mayor Network? So it's something that we're developing as we go, having only previously really focused on the Netherlands for youth bicycle mayors. Different contexts need different things to show the value of the role.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I know we're at time. I really incredible presentation and really inspiring and into like demonstrating what youth can do to really drive drive this work forward. So thank you for all that you're doing, and again, looking forward to to hearing more from you at our next summit next year.
Thanks so much, and hopefully we'll have a youth bicycle mayor presenting for us then.
Okay, that's what we're expecting it now. So, all right. Anyway, so thank you again. So that's all the time we have for questions. We'd like to go on to our next presentation with Jeff Fetterman, who is a NICA coach and representing us from AIM Academy, which is one of our oldest standing schools, one of the very first schools that we granted our Riding for Focus grant back probably 5 years ago. It's been an incredible school for us, and they've had some incredible programming in terms of how they connect not only Riding for Focus but with the local NICA League. So with that, I want to let Jeff talk a little bit about the mountain biking program that they have there.
Thanks, Kim. Greetings, fellow riders and ride leaders and inspirers of our youth. First off, I have to start off by saying I love seeing all this action nationally and internationally around the cycling community, getting kids riding. My focus is on recording the voices of our youth cycling community. And like I said, I want to start by saying it's an honor to speak at Project Outride's 6th annual summit to so many people who lead rides with our future leaders. My name is Jeff Fetterman. My students at AIM Academy call me Coach Jeff or the Bike Guy. Here at AIM Academy in Conshohocken, we have a long-standing relationship with Project Outride, and biking is one of our signature programs at the school. I'm lucky enough to be the leader of Project Bike Tech in the upper school, Project Outride in the middle school. I'm a little out of breath because I just got back from a long bike ride with my upper schoolers. And although I'm new to the role at AIM, close friends with Ann Rock, who started this program. She's huge in the cycling community around Philadelphia. I just spoke with her this morning. She's having an event at AIM tonight called Bike Mayor on Main Street. There'll be hundreds of people riding through the woods. I've been leading Voyageur canoe trips in North Woods of Canada for 24 years, teaching close to 30 years, and all the while working to record the voices of our youth through journaling about their journeys through life. Our work with youth is incredibly important, in their thoughts, their emotions, successes, ponderings, and struggles need to be captured along with the empirical data that we strive to collect during Project Outride. Next slide, please. At AIM Academy is a private school for students in grades 1 to 12. Our students at AIM are wonderfully unique in that they all have learning differences like ADHD, dyslexia, dysphagia, and other reading, writing, and communication challenges. In my opinion, this makes recording their thoughts and voices all the more important, and with that, all the more challenging. Our facility and our program, 2 to 3 times a week, I get a chance to ride bikes with various groups of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in our middle school, departing from Sam's Place. Picture of Sam's Place on the right, where I'm sitting right now, actually. Sam's Place is an energizing building on our campus, and it was created in honor of Sam Ozier, a graduate of AIM, who loved mountain biking, raced on the school mountain bike team, and was tragically killed by a hit-and-run driver while riding his bike home from his job at a local bike shop, where he was going to begin attending Drexel very soon to do bike fabrication. We ride on the bike path that's directly behind the school. It's called the SRT, or the Schuylkill River Trail. I invite you, if you're ever in Philly, look me up. I'd love to take you out on this beautiful little band. The trail spans east to Center City, Philadelphia, and west to Valley Forge Park and beyond, and allows us to avoid roads. And we also stop a lot and talk and journal wherever and whenever we want. Next slide, please. Our program, it's a facet of Project Outride program at AIM, includes journaling before, during, and after each ride. I know that during our weekly skill building biking sessions, they parallel our mountain bike skill set up by NICA. I'm a NICA coach. And we do every skill from loading up forks to steering, to bike checks, to downhill skills, to braking. And I probably talk too much. So I decided to leave room for our young riders to share their thoughts and voices. Next slide, please. So the inspiration of this is that this is where journaling comes in, and the use of quotes comes in. Each student has their own journal. And it's stored on their helmet when they're not riding, on the workbenches. And each day we get together, we start with a quote of the day, an inspiration. Quotes range from Dalai Lama to Dolly Parton, Martin Luther King to Billie Jean King. And the basic idea, and I'll share some of the kids' responses, but my focus on sharing quotes is to introduce diverse authors to our students and show them new perspectives and approaches to life and problem solving. I found that many of the students' responses themselves are actually quotable. Students copy the quote in their journal and then answer the simple question, what do you think the author meant, or what does it mean to you? Next slide, please. On our rides, I always bring the journals and pens, and they're nice and small, the journals, and they fit easily in my riding backpack. And during our rides, discussions naturally come up about the quotes. Sometimes we stop and write more. Sometimes the writers want to share what the quotes meant to them in their lives right now. The final slide of this presentation shows you where you can get the journals, find quotes that you might want to use, and also how to conclude a quarter or a semester. I tried to create this journaling program to keep it simple, with all the focus on being on student voices, where I'm not in the front of speaking, they're in the front, and they're highlighted, and their thinking is highlighted. Here are some of the student responses, because this is kind of what I find the most interesting. We're still on that slide. The response to this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt: "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." JD, an 8th grader in group B, commented, "If you believe in your dreams, the future is whatever you want." To the quote from Mahatma Gandhi, "The future depends on what you do today," Maya, an 8th grader in group A, wrote, "My perspective is that sometimes it isn't always like that, because people can change what they want in their future, but it may not always happen the way they want it to." And another quote from Dolly Parton: "The way I see it is, if you want the rainbow, you have to put up with the rain." Liam, a 7th grader, responded, "I think this quote means that for good times, you have to wait." And for that same quote, Lily, another 7th grader, wrote, "You have to do things that suck to do things that are good." And for that same quote, Lucas, a 7th grader, wrote, "It means you can never give up when there are tough challenges, because if you do, you'll never reach the end." And lastly, Adam, an 8th grader, wrote, "This quote means that in order for you to have joy, you need to face sadness and hardships. Next slide, please. At the end of the semester, I plan to type up their words, thoughts, dump all their words and thoughts into a word cloud. And then this way they can get a visual of what words come up frequently. Sorry, I'm reading the chat while I'm talking. What words come up frequently, what thoughts, what emotions, and sometimes we do something as simple as we'll just go out and write haikus, or we'll go out and write acrostics. So I use Brainy Quote for many of my ride quotes because you can easily search authors and topics. And you know, basically you can see that the line journals cost only $21 for 40 of them. And the creativity of the writers, I find to be free. They're an inspiration. I look forward to riding every period with the kids. I get to ride 5 or 6 times a day. We ride a couple of miles. Rain or shine, if it's really pouring, we skip it. But the kids always want to journal. I mean, they've gotten into this routine where they come in, they put their helmet on, they do their helmet check, to wiggle test. They pick up their journal, they look at the board, and they want to write, and they want to ride, and they want to talk. And some kids talk more, some kids write more. So can I have the last slide, please? I'm going to leave you with this quote from Ernest Hemingway. It's by riding a bicycle that you learn the contours of a country best, since you have to sweat up the hills and coast down them. Are there any questions?
All right, Jeff, that's thank you for that. And I'm getting I haven't seen so many questions come through, but I think what you're presenting today has been incredibly inspirational to, well, to me personally, but the people, you know, on the panel and the people, you know, sending in their messages. It's just a beautiful, beautiful idea. And as I think you mentioned early on, I mean, AIM Academy is definitely, you know, kids with a variety of learning differences, and you know, really providing them an opportunity to be able to articulate, and using the bicycle as a way to help them to articulate, you know, what they're thinking, what they're feeling is just it's a very moving thing. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Kim, you know, things are a little bit slower here sometimes to set up things, and that's why I wanted to do a quick journaling and then get out on the trail. The kids really want to ride. Yeah. And I can't tell you how many times they just express, they're so much more expressive when they're out on a ride, but they'll say, it feels so good to be out on a bike today. Like I could not wait for this period. And they just want to ride up in the front with me, where sometimes they want to pass me, but and one day a week we do work on skills, and then we put everything into play. We have all kinds of obstacle courses, and there are some trails, or actually mountain bike trails, but obviously the focus is on safety, but getting them out to ride is paramount. Yeah. And then also hearing voices is parallel to that.
So I think, you know, and the theme of this conference, a lot of it is about, you know, the connection between riding and cognition and mental wellness and so on. And I think, you know, the journaling is definitely one outlet for being able to express that for kids. So why do you think they're so excited to journal as part of their writing? Not writing.
I actually asked them that exact question, like the second or third week we were journaling, and I don't require them to write a lot. They can write in bullet points. There's not a lot of, there doesn't have to be a lot of dialogue. I'm not checking them for grammar or spelling, and they can just write down a few words and then explain it and then write a little bit more. Also, I think I've noticed that the quotes hit them more while we're out riding. And one of them will say, you know what, that made me think about this quote I heard from Abraham Lincoln, or this quote that I heard, you know, I don't know, Eleanor Roosevelt or somebody else say. And so I think it's a freeing activity for them, that it's not real arduous, heavy thinking. It's just a different way to look at life.
Yeah. I have a number of thoughts about it, especially given the research that was presented yesterday. But you know, initially, is there any pushback that kids have when when they start this process, and how do you handle that? And, you know, how have they progressed from the initial ask to where they are today?
Well, that's a great question. I not pushback as much as just adapting to journaling. I have a couple of students that have difficulty, they have dysphagia, they have difficulty writing. And so I write the journals for them, and I write the quotes for them in their journal, and then they work to reflect on it. I give them some time to reflect. Also, the fact that they can either write in it when we stop somewhere overlooking the Schuylkill River or somewhere further down the trail. And so there hasn't been any, interestingly, I haven't had any pushback. They've adapted to it. As a matter of fact, like they come in and grab the journal, they sit down in here and immediately write. Even the youngest kids, the sixth graders. I think they're so excited to get out on bikes. It's such a freeing part of the day. And as the year goes on, we're going to also introduce canoeing in the same way and do a similar activity on the Schuylkill River right out in front of me, and bringing the bikes in canoes and canoe out and bike back. And the whole idea that just kind of get out in a different mode of transportation, eco-friendly, right, and hang out with their friends.
Awesome. So we have a number of questions. We won't be able to address them all, but we'll compile them and send them along for you so we can maybe answer them and send them back out. But I do want to ask one last question. And this is really about how does this exercise help them to build confidence and self-esteem, in terms of being able to articulate their feelings and so on. Do you see that helping them to express themselves in terms of their gaining confidence and self-esteem?
Confidence and self-esteem, their peers listening to them, first of all. Just I'm big on listening skills and focusing and body language, squaring up to the person who's talking. And so taking that time to kind of exhale for a minute after you read something or they read the quote. And I do think their voices are being heard in a lot of different ways. And kids on the ride being so open to talk. So different kids, like I said, come and ride up in the front with me, and they'll sometimes just say, hi, they'll talk about struggles they're having in math or struggles they're having with reading, and how that there's so much success in just going for a bike ride, the simplicity of it, and getting away from campus. And I always say Sam's Place is their escape. They get to come all the way down here away from campus and leave and celebrate being outside, being together. So I think there's a lot of confidence and confidence building and just a kind of a good feeling of getting some exercise. Does that answer your question, Kim?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it really is. It sounds like it's the whole package. You've really done an amazing program, and it's quite, from beginning to end for the kids. And you have the advantage of seeing them from early in school all the way up through 12th grade. So right. I just again really want to applaud what you and the team there at AIM have done to really embrace and have cycling as being a really fundamental core component of what you're offering for your students every single day. So thank you again for joining us and sharing that, and really inspired a lot of thinking with the people here. So that's all the time we have at the moment. And I think all the panelists, everybody today has given us some great ideas on how we can include student voices, youth voices in the work that we all do every day. We'd like to take a short break at the moment, and we'll come back at 9:45 Pacific. And we'll have our next session of the day is focused on amplifying women's voices and getting more girls on bikes. So thank you all, and we'll see you in about 12 minutes.